Listen closely, for I'm about to tell you something they don't teach in their fluorescent-lit seminars on modern love. Something that crawls beneath the skin of every failed romance, every text left unread, every goodbye that came too late. There's an old Romanian folktale about a merchant who sold shadows. Not his own. No, he was far too clever for that. He sold the shadows of lovers to their beloveds, promising that possession of another's shadow meant eternal devotion. The village women lined up with gold coins, desperate to own what followed their men in daylight. But here's what the merchant knew and never told. Shadows only exist in the presence of light. Take away the sun, and you're left clutching at nothing. Modern love has become this same fool's transaction. We chase presents, constant texts, immediate responses, the dopamine hit of a heart emoji at 2 a.m. We've become addicts to availability, measuring affection in response time. But tell me, when was the last time you truly missed someone? Not the shallow ache of a delayed reply, but the bone-deep hunger that comes from genuine absence. Machiavelli understood something we've forgotten in our age of instant everything. Men are so simple, he wrote, and so ready to obey present necessities. Present necessities? We've made ourselves into vending machines of affection, insert attention, receive validation. But what happens when the machine goes dark? I knew a man once, let's call him Marcus, though that wasn't his name. Marcus loved like most men do today. Desperately, immediately, suffocatingly. He'd text his woman good morning before his feet hit the floor, narrate his day in real-time updates, send goodnight messages that read like Victorian love letters. She left him, of course. Not for another man, but for the simple luxury of breathing without commentary. Here's what they don't tell you about absence. It's not empty space. It's negative space, like in those optical illusions where two faces become a vase. The space between things defines their shape more than the things themselves. A 2024 study from the University of Heidelberg found that couples who practiced strategic unavailability, planned periods of no contact, reported 37% higher relationship satisfaction than those in constant communication. The researchers called it the paradox of distance-induced intimacy. But this isn't about playing games, you see. This is about understanding the rhythm of longing itself. Picture this. A man sits in a dimly lit room, burgundy curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The air smells of old books and yesterday's wine. His phone lies face down on the mahogany desk, silent as a confessional booth. He's learning something revolutionary, how to exist without narrating his existence to another. In this silence, something strange happens. He begins to hear his own thoughts again, not as Instagram captions or text messages, but as the raw, unfiltered consciousness they were meant to be. The Sufis have a word, hal, for a state of being that comes and goes like weather. You cannot summon it or hold it. You can only recognize its presence and absence. Love, real love, operates on this same principle. It's not a faucet you leave running, wasting water for fear the well might dry. It's the desert rain, rare, powerful, and all the more precious for its scarcity. Think of jazz, if you will. Miles Davis once said the notes you don't play are more important than the ones you do. Every competent musician can fill space with sound. It takes a master to wield silence like an instrument. In relationships, we're all amateur musicians, afraid of the quiet, filling every pause with noise. I'll tell you a secret that would have saved me 1,000 sleepless nights. Absence is not punishment, it's punctuation. Without spaces between words, language becomes an incomprehensible stream. Without winter, spring is just another day. Without hunger, every meal tastes like cardboard. The cruelest joke? Women already know this. They've always known. Watch how they apply perfume. Not where you'll smell it immediately, but where it will unfold hours later. A ghost of their presence when they're gone. They understand that desire lives in the space between wanting and having. But we men, we love like toddlers eat ice cream, frantically, messily, trying to consume it all before it melts. We mistake intensity for depth, frequency for connection, presence for proof. Here's what Machiavelli really meant. Let her feel your absence not as manipulation, but as the natural rhythm of two complete human beings. Let her miss the specific weight of your silence, the particular shape of your shadow, the exact frequency of your laughter. These things cannot be missed if they never leave. The merchant in that Romanian tale. He died wealthy but alone, surrounded by the shadows he'd sold. They found him one morning, covered in darkness that wasn't his own. The moral wasn't about the danger of selling shadows. It was about forgetting that shadows need light to exist, and light needs darkness to be seen. Tell me, listener, in this age of perpetual presence, when did you last allow yourself to be properly missed? Or have you, like so many others, become afraid of the space between heartbeats? When her approval becomes your oxygen, you've already begun to suffocate. There's a species of moth in Madagascar that evolved to feed exclusively on the tears of sleeping birds. Think about that for a moment. Millions of years of evolution, countless genetic iterations, all to create a creature that sustains itself on another's unconscious sorrow. If that isn't a perfect metaphor for what we've become in love, I don't know what is. I'm going to tell you about the most expensive prison ever built. No walls, no bars, no guards. Just a woman's smile and the narcotic rush of her approval. The inmates? They check themselves in voluntarily, convince themselves the chains are jewelry, and defend their captivity with the zealousness of converts. Last week, I watched a grown man, successful entrepreneur, built 2 companies from nothing, refresh his phone 17 times during a business lunch. His crime: sending a photo of his meal to a woman who may or may not have been thinking of him. Each refresh without response dimmed something in his eyes, like watching a star collapse in real time. By dessert, he was a black hole in an Armani suit. The ancient Greeks had a word: thumos, the part of the soul that craves recognition. They considered it necessary but dangerous, like fire. Useful for warmth and light, catastrophic when it becomes the only source of either. Modern man has made thumos his god and her validation his temple. Let me paint you a scene. It's 3 a.m. in a studio apartment that costs too much for what it is. The walls are thin enough to hear the neighbor's Netflix choices. Our protagonist, let's call him every man, lies awake, constructing elaborate fantasies where she finally sees his worth. In these fever dreams, she always says the perfect thing at the perfect moment, validates every insecurity, heals every childhood wound with a single "I'm proud of you." But here's the sick joke. Even if she said those exact words, they'd never be enough. Because validation is heroin, the first hit is transcendent, and every subsequent dose is just chasing that initial high. A 2025 study from Stockholm's Institute for Relationship Dynamics found something disturbing. Men who reported high levels of emotional dependence on their partner's validation showed the same neurological patterns as gambling addicts. The dopamine spike from a compliment, the cortisol crash from criticism, their brains literally restructured themselves around her approval patterns. You want to know the most pathetic thing I've ever seen? A mirror in a man's bathroom with sticky notes around it. His girlfriend had written affirmations for him to read each morning. You're worthy of love. You're enough. You make me proud. Sweet, you might think. Supportive. But I saw his face when he read them. Not comfort, but desperate hunger, like a vampire checking if his reflection had finally appeared. Schopenhauer wrote that we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves to be like other people. He was an optimist. In the velvet prison of her validation, we forfeit everything, then convince ourselves the loss was a bargain. Consider the peacock, that magnificent tail that we admire. It's a death sentence. Too heavy to fly efficiently, too bright to hide from predators. Every spreading of those feathers screams, "Look at me, love me, choose me," while simultaneously announcing, "I am vulnerable, I am target practice, I am evolutionary insanity. Modern man's peacock tail is his need for her approval. We display our wounds like plumage, perform our improvement like a mating dance, mistake her attention for atmosphere. I once knew a writer, brilliant mind, could make words dance like Salome, who stopped writing the day his woman said she preferred men of action. 6 months later, he was at the gym 7 days a week, quoting Marcus Aurelius on Instagram, cosplaying as someone he thought she'd admire. She left him anyway, not for a man of action, but for a poet who didn't need her permission to exist. Here's what they don't teach you in those relationship podcasts with their talk of love languages and attachment styles. The moment you need someone else to tell you who you are, you cease to be anyone at all. The Buddhists have this concept of the hungry ghost, beings with enormous stomachs but tiny mouths, forever eating but never satisfied. That's what we become when we feast on validation. No amount of I love yous can fill the void where self-worth should be. But the real tragedy, women don't actually want this power. Watch a woman's face when she realizes her man's entire emotional ecosystem depends on her mood. It's not love she feels, it's exhaustion. The weight of being someone's entire world is crushing. They want partners, not patients, lovers, not addicts. The velvet prison is comfortable, I'll give you that. Soft walls, familiar chains, and the sweet morphine drip of her approval to numb whatever originally hurt. But comfort and freedom have always been enemies. One requires surrender, the other demands sovereignty. Late at night, in those honest moments between sleep and waking, every man knows the truth. We've confused being chosen with being worthy, being desired with being complete, being loved with being alive. The moth in Madagascar doesn't know it's a parasite. It simply follows its nature, drawn to the salt of tears like we're drawn to the salt of her approval. But at least the moth has an excuse. It never had a choice. So tell me, prisoner, what would you become if her eyes closed forever? Would you finally discover who you are, or would you simply cease to exist? Every relationship is a hall of mirrors where you only meet yourself in disguise. Have you ever noticed how fun house mirrors tell more truth than regular ones? At least they're honest about their distortion. But the mirrors we create in love, those perfectly warped surfaces where we see only what we need to see, those are the dangerous ones. I'm going to tell you about a discovery that should have changed everything, but changed nothing. In 1974, a psychologist named Arthur Aron created a series of questions that could make strangers fall in love. 36 questions, precisely ordered, followed by 4 minutes of sustained eye contact. It worked. It still works. But here's what Aron discovered that nobody talks about. The subjects weren't falling in love with each other. They were falling in love with their own reflection in the other's attention. Picture a man in a cafe in Prague, one of those underground places where the cigarette smoke has seeped so deep into the walls that they exhale nicotine. He's telling a woman about his father, maybe for the first time. She listens with that particular intensity that makes you feel like the only person who ever suffered beautifully. In her eyes, he sees himself not as he is, bitter, abandoned, ordinary, but as he desperately needs to be. Tragic, complex, worthy of witness. He thinks he loves her. What he loves is himself in her gaze. The Gnostics believed that the material world was created by a blind god who mistook his reflection for another deity. In his loneliness, he crafted entire universes trying to reach what was only himself, reversed. Every time I see a man destroy his life for love, I think of that blind god, creating and destroying worlds to embrace his own shadow. A recent neuroscience study from MIT found something unsettling. When we look at someone we believe we love, the same neural pathways activate as when we look in a mirror. The brain literally cannot distinguish between the beloved and the self. We've evolved to be narcissists in love's clothing. Let me tell you about the cruelest magic trick ever performed. No top hat, no rabbit, just 2 people across a dinner table. Watch closely, she says. Tell me about your dreams. He hears, "You are fascinating." She says, "I love how passionate you are about music." He hears, "You are special." She says, "I've never met anyone like you." He hears, "You are the one." But what she's really saying, if you listen with clean ears, is, "I'm lonely too. I also need someone to see me as more than I am. Let's be each other's funhouse mirrors. Let's agree to this beautiful distortion." The tragedy isn't the deception. It's that both parties know, on some cellular level, that it's all reflection and no substance. But the alternative, seeing ourselves clearly, without the soft focus filter of another's desire, is too brutal for most to bear. Kierkegaard wrote about the aesthetic stage of existence, where we live only in the immediate, the sensual, the reflected. He said we must move through ethical existence to reach the religious, but he missed a crucial point. Most men get stuck not in the aesthetic, but in the reflection of the aesthetic in a woman's eyes. We become addicted not to beauty, but to being seen as someone who appreciates beauty. I once watched a man learn to love wine because a sommelier with green eyes told him he had an undeveloped but promising palate. 5 years later, he owned a wine cellar worth more than his car, spoke fluently about tannins and terroir, and had forgotten that he actually preferred beer. But in her eyes, he was sophisticated, and that reflection became his reality. The Japanese have a phrase, "Kyoka suigetsu," flowers in the mirror, moon on the water. Beautiful things that cannot be grasped because they're only reflections. Every person we've ever loved is kyoka suigetsu. We reach for them and touch only ourselves, rippling. Here's the part that will hurt. She's doing it too. That woman you think sees the real you, she's looking at her own reflection in your desire. You're her mirror, confirming she's lovable, desirable, worth the effort. It's mirrors all the way down, each one reflecting nothing but need back at need. A man once told me he knew his marriage was over when he realized he could predict his wife's every response. Not because he knew her so well, but because her responses were just echoes of what he needed to hear. She'd become such a perfect mirror that she'd cease to exist, and without her existence, his reflection had nowhere to appear. The most honest thing anyone ever said about love came from a drunk philosopher at 4 a.m. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with how they make us feel about ourselves. Then he laughed, ordered another whiskey, and said, "The joke's on us. It's all just masturbation with extra steps." But here's the real mindfuck. Knowing it's all mirrors doesn't break the spell. We're like moths who've been told the flame is dangerous. We nod, we understand, we agree completely. Then we fly straight into it anyway, because the alternative is darkness. And darkness means confronting what we look like without the light. So I ask you, gazer into mirrors, what would happen if every reflective surface in your world suddenly went dark? Would you finally have to meet yourself without an audience? Or would you simply cease to believe you exist? Some men tend graveyards thinking they're gardeners, too proud to admit nothing grows in poisoned soil. There's a monastery in the mountains of Tibet where monks practice a peculiar form of meditation. They sit before bowls of water, watching their own faces age in the reflection, moment by moment, breath by breath. They call it rehearsing impermanence. But I know men who perform this same ritual with dead relationships, except they call it love. Listen, and I'll tell you about the most expensive garden in the world. Not Versailles with its geometric perfection, not Babylon with its hanging wonders. No, this garden exists in the hearts of men who water dead roses, who whisper to stalks that stopped listening years ago, who mistake the smell of decay for the perfume of possibility. I met him in a bar in Lisbon, one of those fado houses where the music sounds like heartbreak set to guitar. 3 drinks in, he showed me her picture. Not recent, from 4 years ago when she still looked at him like he might be someone. "We're working through things," he said, the way a grave digger might say he's practicing medicine. She'd left him, emotionally, somewhere between the second year and the third. Her body stayed another 2, a haunting in designer jeans. But he couldn't see the ghost for the woman, couldn't smell the formaldehyde beneath the Chanel No. 5. Schopenhauer believed that we're all just will, blind, irrational force, deceiving ourselves with representations. But some men take this further. They become will, refusing to see that the representation has already packed its bags and moved to another time zone of the heart. A 2024 psychological study from the University of Copenhagen coined a term, relationship perseveration. The compulsive tendency to maintain emotional investment in demonstrably dead relationships. The subjects showed similar brain patterns to those suffering from complicated grief, except they were mourning something that sat across from them at breakfast. Let me paint you the scene that plays out in 10,000 bedrooms every night. He reaches across the void between them, that arctic expanse of cold sheets. She turns away, not cruelly, just reflexively, the way you'd turn from a stranger's touch on the subway. He tells himself she's tired, stressed. Tomorrow will be different. He's been telling himself that for 943 tomorrows. The ancient Egyptians mummified their dead, believing preservation was a form of honor. Modern men mummify their relationships, mistaking preservation for love. They wrap the corpse in anniversary dinners, couples therapy, and weekend getaways. But underneath all those bandages is still just death, perfumed and positioned to look like sleep. You want to know the darkest joke? These men often pride themselves on their loyalty. I don't give up, they say, like persistence is always a virtue. As if watering plastic flowers proves you're a gardener. As if performing CPR on a skeleton makes you a healer. There's a story, maybe true, maybe not, does it matter? About a Victorian gentleman who kept his wife's corpse in their bed for 7 years after she died. He'd dress her each morning, tell her about his day each night. The neighbors thought him devoted. The truth? He was terrified of being alone with himself. The corpse was less about her and more about having a witness to his existence, even if that witness had marble eyes. Modern men do the same thing with dying love. They need the structure, you see. The routine of dysfunction, the familiar rhythm of disappointment. Better the devil, you know, even if that devil stopped dancing years ago. I've watched men perform the most elaborate rituals to avoid the truth. They become archaeologists of past happiness, digging up fossilized memories and trying to breathe life into bones. Remember when you used to? Becomes their mantra, as if the past could be defibrillated back to the present. The Zen masters say, let go or be dragged. But some men would rather be dragged across continents of broken glass than release their grip on what's already gone. They mistake suffering for depth, endurance for love, and bloody knees for proof they're fighting the good fight. Here's what nobody tells you about dead roses. They're easier to love than living ones. They make no demands. They never change. They never challenge you to grow. You can project whatever meaning you want onto their dried petals, and they'll never contradict your narrative. A living garden. That requires attention, adaptation, the humility to admit when something isn't thriving. It requires you to change with the seasons, to sometimes let things die so new things can grow. But that's terrifying for men who've built their entire identity around being the keeper of one specific garden. The Portuguese have a word, saudade, for the presence of absence, the melancholy of missing something that perhaps never existed as you remember it. Men watering dead roses are living embodiments of saudade. Except they've confused the feeling for the thing itself. Last month I saw a man buy flowers for a woman who hadn't loved him in years. Not grocery store flowers, the expensive kind, from that shop where they remember your name. He knew she wouldn't care. She knew he knew, but the ritual had to continue, because without it, he'd have to face what they'd become. Two strangers sharing a mortgage, and the ghost of a feeling that fled so long ago they'd forgotten its face. Tell me, keeper of dead gardens, what would happen if you finally stopped watering those roses? Would you discover you still have hands capable of planting something new? Or have you been a ghost yourself so long that you've forgotten you could choose to live? In learning to love your own shadow, you discover the only companion who'll never leave. And now we arrive at the last truth, the one that tastes like medicine and burns like revelation. After all the mirrors shatter, after the validation runs dry, after the roses turn to dust, after the absence becomes permanent, what remains? I'll tell you what remains, the magnificent, terrifying liberation of your own company. There's a cave in Greece where the oracle of Trophonius once spoke. Pilgrims would descend into absolute darkness, drink from two springs, Lethe for forgetting, Mnemosyne for remembering, and emerge either mad or enlightened. The difference? Whether they could bear meeting themselves without the comfort of another's gaze. Most men today would rather stay above ground in the false light of borrowed warmth. But you who followed me this far into the dark, you're ready for a different kind of truth. I knew a man once who lost everything in the span of a season. His woman left on a Tuesday. His job evaporated on a Thursday. By Sunday, he was sitting in an empty apartment with nothing but a mattress on the floor and the terrifying realization that he didn't know who he was without these external definitions. For 3 days, he said, he felt like he was dying. On the 4th day, something strange happened. He woke up and made coffee just for himself, not to share, not to impress, not to fill time before someone else woke up. Just coffee, just him, just the morning light through bare windows. It was the best cup of coffee I'd ever had, he told me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't performing the act of drinking coffee. I was just drinking coffee. Nietzsche wrote about the last man and the overman. Everyone fixates on the overman, that theoretical peak of human potential. But first, you must become the last man, the one who stands alone when all the false idols have fallen. The one who discovers that the abyss gazing back is just himself, and that maybe, just maybe, that's enough. A 2025 study from the Institute of Solitude Studies in Oslo found something remarkable. Men who spent extended periods in intentional solitude showed increased gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the area associated with self-awareness and emotional regulation. Their brains literally rewired themselves for independence. But here's the kicker. These same men reported deeper, more meaningful connections when they did choose company. They'd learned the paradox that you can only truly be with another when you no longer need them. Let me tell you about the most subversive act a modern man can commit. Enjoying a meal alone in a restaurant without looking at his phone. Try it. Feel the weight of others' eyes, their pity, their assumption that you must be lonely. Then feel the deeper weight lift, the weight of needing their approval, their understanding, their validation of your existence. There's an old Sufi tale about a man who searched the world for God, visiting every temple, every shrine, every holy site. Finally, exhausted and broke, he returned home to find God sitting in his kitchen, brewing tea. "I've been here all along," God said, "but you had to leave to learn how to see me." The sacred art of becoming alone isn't about isolation, it's about integration. It's about discovering that the voice in your head, when not drowned out by others' opinions, might actually have something worthwhile to say. It's about learning that solitude isn't empty space. It's space full of you. I've started taking long walks at dawn, when the city sleeps and the streets belong to no one. There's a particular quality to pre-dawn darkness, a velvet weight that makes you feel like the last person on earth. In those moments, I've discovered something terrifying and beautiful. I actually like my own company. Not in a narcissistic way, but in the way you might like an old friend who knows all your stories but still shows up. The Japanese have a concept, ikigai, your reason for being. We've bastardized it in the West, turned it into career advice and life coaching fodder. But the real ikigai isn't found in the intersection of what you love and what the world needs. It's found in the 3 a.m. conversation with yourself when you finally stop running from your own thoughts. Here's what they never tell you about rock bottom. It's solid. You can build on it. All those years trying to find yourself in others' eyes, you were looking up when you should have been looking down, finding the bedrock of your own being. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself in a military tent, surrounded by death and duty. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Easy for an emperor to say. No. Necessary for an emperor to discover. The external power meant nothing without the internal sovereignty. The phoenix doesn't rise despite the ashes, it rises because of them. Everything false must burn away before the truth of what you are can emerge. And what emerges when you finally stop fleeing into others' arms is not loneliness but solitude. Not emptiness but space. Not absence but presence. Your own presence. Finally, enough. Last week, I watched the sun set from my apartment window. No one to share it with, no one to perform my appreciation for. Just me and the dying light and the strange peace of being exactly where I was, who I was, without apology or explanation. In that moment, I understood what all the mystics were pointing at. The profound okayness of being alone. Not as a waiting room for the next relationship, but as a complete experience in itself. So here's my final question, fellow traveler in the dark. What would you become if you spent the next year falling in love with your own company? Not as a consolation prize, not as preparation for someone else, but as the ultimate romance, the one between you and the life you're living when no one's watching.